Hi, it's Madhav and I've been back at work with artificial intelligence. Last time I created a project to identify different handwritten numbers, and this time I've decided to take a look at Google's Tensorflow, which is a tool that many industry professionals use while creating artificial intelligence algorithms. And back in my day, we had to code our own functions, but with TensorFlow, it's basically as simple as going to a restaurant. You choose what kind of sauce you want on your pasta and whether you'd like a side of sigmoid functions, and with that, you're just good to go. The reason I went with TensorFlow is because it's frequently updated, so it's really easy to use that tool, that framework, in order to try out some of the most recent innovations in artificial intelligence. And specifically, I worked with 5 different algorithms to increase my industry experience, and the simplicity didn't hurt either. So first off, we have a clothing classifier that I built, and it's what it sounds like. It takes a look at different types of clothing and then decides what it's looking at. And this is a really great project for beginners because it's really simple. And if you're like me and you have no idea what fashion sense is, then finally you have a solution with the help of AI. Now, after the last project, this one was really easy because I could compare all of TensorFlow's functions to the ones that I created myself, and it just made me realize how quickly it was to make projects with TensorFlow and how it really helped out people trying to code these algorithms. That being said, I don't entirely know if I would have understood the principles behind the code as well if I hadn't done my project previously, which is why I'm not as sure that it's the best way to start out, because it's harder to learn the fundamental principles behind AI. Then, for my second project, even though that the clothing classifier was pretty similar to the one I made before with handwritten digits, I decided that it just wasn't close enough. So for my second project, I decided to copy it entirely, in that the algorithm was again trying to identify handwritten numbers, but I did it with a new type of algorithm which is called a CNN. And no, that's not an army of Anderson Coopers. What a CNN does is it basically tries to simplify the image by making it smaller before it tries to process it, which is a way to more easily understand the features of an image. For instance, if you're looking at numbers, understand why a 0 has a lot of curves in comparison to a 1. Now with this project, I actually found it harder than the last clothing classifier, which was because I'd never worked with CNN algorithms before. So there was a bit more of a learning curve. That being said, I think it was definitely easier than not using TensorFlow and making a project from scratch on my own. Now, with TensorFlow, I could focus on high-level architecture and look at how different layers, say, in the algorithm interacted with each other. But I didn't have the experience of, say, coding every function from the ground up and actually calculating values by myself, which is kind of a limitation because I think someone else is going to come up to me and be like, well, back in my day, we actually had to calculate the values for the max pooling layers. Then we get to my favorite project of the bunch, which was an AI algorithm which tried to understand human emotions, you know, which is perfect for people who might have trouble understanding social situations, like not me, of course, but other people. All jokes aside, it's actually really simple but really brilliant. What it does is it tries to look at people's movie reviews to understand how they feel about the movies, whether they like the movie or not. And to do that, it looks at the words that the people use. So, say you get a text message from your friend and it says, hey, versus hey, versus hey. Similar to how you might react differently to those different situations, the algorithm uses the different words that people use in order to piece together how they're feeling about the movie. At first, I was really surprised to see how it could be possible that computers could understand human emotions, because humans are really complicated, not because I can't understand humans. But after, I was actually really interested to learn about the approach that the algorithms used to get over this. So instead of looking at human emotions, it tried to look at the words people used when they were feeling certain emotions. And if you extended this approach, then I think this has a lot of commercial viability actually. So say you analyze not only words but also facial characteristics. You could really enhance customer service, for instance, by trying to understand how customers are feeling and then trying to make sure that they feel happy when they're conducting business. So after working with that algorithm to analyze human emotions, for my next project I decided to be a bit less practical and have a bit more randomness in my project by plagiarizing, mimicking Shakespeare. And they say imitation is flattery, so I decided to create an RNN which would recreate some of Shakespeare's plays. So the RNN was special in that it used previous context, so say previous letters in a word or previous words in a play, to predict what the next ones would be. And in that, word by word and letter by letter, it built out an entire play. Now, the best thing about it, of course, was that if you want to impress your English teacher, you'd write a good essay, but I wanted to impress my computer science teacher, so I got AI to write a Shakespearean essay for me. Now this time, the benefits and drawbacks of Tensorflow became really apparent, as coding the RNN, it wasn't that much harder than coding one of the other algorithms, like the clothing classifier I made. And essentially it came down to changing a few options and preparing data a bit differently. But in real life, RNNs are like other algorithms but raised to the next level. So I don't think I understood the fundamentals of how they work and why specifically they're different from many other types of algorithms as strongly as I would have liked. So even though TensorFlow made it really easy to go through the code quickly, I don't think it was great for allowing me to learn as much as I would have liked about RNNs. Finally, for my fifth and final project with TensorFlow, I tried out the biggest project with AI that I've ever worked on. And there, what I did was I created another RNN algorithm similar to the last one in that it generated text, and what it did was it looked at a huge variety of images and tried to create captions for them. So whether that be people surfing on waves or dogs going for a walk in the park, it had to generate accurate grammatical captions for all of them. And the challenge was, with the huge variety of images, you needed a lot of training to make the algorithm accurate. Even with TensorFlow's help to speed up the development process, here I had to process 14 gigabytes of images to train the algorithm. And before, I could do all of my projects on even a laptop on an online IDE, but this one was a league of its own. And it was really frustrating to actually set up all of the IDEs, the libraries, all the data sets needed, and it literally took multiple hours just to download all the data I needed. So while I was waiting 4 hours to get my dataset to download, I had to find some amazing ways to spend the time. So here are 5 things you could be doing while waiting for your TensorFlow dataset to download. 1. You could go outside and enjoy the beautiful growth of nature. Or, more realistically, you could turn on the TV and watch Planet Earth. 2. You could read my amazing articles, which are all linked in the description. 3. You could make a spaghetti making AI, like normal people, who cooks all your lunch for you. 4. You could run around and around in circles until you contemplate reality and realize that there is no such thing as a perfect circle. And finally, 5. Did I mention you could read my amazing articles in the description? Now, after your hours of waiting, downloading the dataset and finding amazing ways to pass your time, you realize that you still have to process all of the data into a Tensorflow usable format. As you can imagine, I really did not like this project as much as the others. Now, having finished all of that work with Tensorflow, my overall takeaways are that it's great to speed up development and create a lot of different projects quickly, but it's not the best resource to help you learn about the principles behind AI. So it might be cool to see all of the different applications in the different tutorials on TensorFlow, but if you want to learn about how the technology works at a deeper level, I would recommend taking a more DIY approach, and I actually really value that my first project with AI, I did it without TensorFlow or any other framework. Now, that being said, if you are an experienced programmer, then TensorFlow is definitely great for you because it helps you more quickly churn out solutions. Now for me, the next step is to use TensorFlow to create a prototype for a company that I co-founded in the healthcare industry. Specifically, I'm going to be creating a model that can predict future insect migration behavior and use it to mitigate disease transmission. And I'm going to be posting a video and an article about it soon, so stay tuned for updates.